Going into this arc, I knew almost nothing about Chopper. By the end of it, I understood why people love him the way they do. And on top of that, we get a shift in how Luffy understands his own role as a leader. While this arc is on the way to Alabasta, it's a total recalibration of what the pirate title actually means. We are moving away from the simple idea of adventure and into something deeper. Pirates as the keepers of a specific kind of faith. Let's talk about Drum Island. One of the most striking things about Drum Island is the visual language. On the surface, it's a picturesque landscape, crisp whites, deep greens, pinks. It feels like a pleasant, almost inviting winter wonderland. It doesn't look like a setting for a tragedy. But this visual beauty is a mask. While the land looks inviting, the story being told is one of deep isolation. And I think that's very intentional, because the real sickness of Drum Island isn't the cold, it's what the people in power did to the people who live there. I've talked about the weight of emotion, the Baratier with Sanji and Zeph, the tragedy of Bellamere and Nami in Arlong Park. Chopper's backstory stands right alongside them. It reinforces the central theme of this entire series, found family. Chopper is a masterclass in irony. He ate the human fruit, but he isn't quite human, and he isn't quite reindeer. He's an outcast in every literal sense. He didn't ask to be born with a blue nose. He didn't choose the devil fruit. He just kept existing in a world that refused to make room for him. His life follows the monster story beat for beat. Born biologically different, his own kind rejected him first. Then the transformation made him something uncanny. He's too human for the animals, but too animal for the humans. And when he approached the humans looking for connection, they didn't see a soul, they saw a demon, something to be hunted. What struck me most wasn't Chopper's power, it was his wiring. Despite being shot at and chased and treated like a monster his entire life, his core instinct is still to care. There's that scene where a bird has built a nest on top of one of the castle doors, and the door is just left open, snow is pouring in and it's filling that whole section of the castle, but Chopper doesn't close it because he doesn't want to disturb the nest. He has every reason to let the world burn, and he protects a nest. That detail is doing so much work. It's a Frankenstein story where the monster is actually the most empathetic character in the room. Now, I'm not sure if Oda was directly pulling from Frankenstein, but the parallels feel very intentional. And look, I know I'm probably not the first person to make this connection. I haven't seen the newest modern adaptation, but I remember the old black and white film, and watching Chopper's story unfold, it kept pulling me back to it. In the original story, the father figure fails the son immediately. In One Piece, Dr. Hiriluk does the opposite. Here's the thing about Hiriluk that I think is easy to miss. He wasn't that great of a doctor. His medicine didn't really work, his methods were wrong by any professional standard, but his faith was completely real. And that's a harder, more interesting read than just an inspiring mentor. A man whose execution is flawed but whose conviction is unimpeachable. That's an archetype that hits different. Because Hiriluk wasn't great at the thing he loved, he was just completely unwilling to stop doing it. When he finds Chopper, he doesn't see a beast, he sees a wounded creature that the world has tried to break, and he gives him things that Frankenstein's monster never received. Validation, a home, a purpose. Both Hiriluk and Doctorine call Chopper their son at different points. More adoptive parents. One Piece keeps coming back to that well because it keeps working. I knew the last time Hiriluk walked out of that house after seeing his cherry blossom experiment finally show progress, I knew that was the last time he and Chopper would see each other. The show let you feel it before it told you. And when it finally happened, when Hiriluk chose to go out on his own terms, that was earned. He couldn't tell Chopper the truth because the act that sent Chopper to get that mushroom was so pure. He couldn't bring himself to crush that. His last words were, "Thank you, Chopper." One Piece wants your heart to ache. It wants you to form a real connection with these characters, and it keeps succeeding. Then there's Doctorine. She's 139 years old. She apparently knew the Roger era firsthand. She's the one who actually turned Chopper into a real doctor. Genuine medical skills, discipline, the whole thing. A devil fruit user with instincts becomes a doctor with a purpose, and she masks all of that care behind a rough, eccentric exterior. And I noticed she has cherry blossom petals on her shirt. That detail tells you everything about who she is and what she carries. It's the same move as Zeph, profound love expressed through everything except a direct declaration of it. And then there's Dalton, a man carrying the guilt of his past service to Wapol, genuinely trying to make it right. Hiriluk's conviction gets through to him, and Dalton in turn saves Chopper before things get worse. That ripple effect, one man's faith moving through other people, is the whole thesis of this arc. Oda gets you to care about this supporting cast in a remarkably short time. That's not easy to do. One more thing about Chopper I think is worth sitting with. Despite having every reason to give up on people, he still chose to become a doctor. He was born different, rejected by his own kind, hunted by humans, and his response to all of that was to dedicate his life to healing. The irony is almost too much, but it speaks volumes about who Chopper is at his core. He wants to become a doctor who can cure any disease. He's carrying Hiriluk's impossible mission forward. That's why he belongs on this crew. They're all chasing something the world says can't be done. As I've been on this journey, we've been talking about pirates as symbols of freedom, but Drum Island pushes that further. Here, being a pirate means standing for people who fight for something that the world has already written off. Hiriluk says it directly. Nothing is impossible for a man who raises a pirate flag. He says he'll fight like a pirate, and in this show, that framing matters. They're the people willing to raise a flag for something everyone else says is hopeless. The skull on the flag doesn't mean death, it means faith. Hiriluk's flag represented his fight against all diseases, yes, but more than that, it represented his belief that he could cure a country's sick heart. The country had lost its soul under Wapol's control. The citizens had given up, and Hiriluk kept going anyway. His last act was to go out on his own terms, with that flag still flying, so that Chopper would never have to carry the weight of his death. He chose to live on through his faith instead. Hiriluk says a man dies when people forget him. The flag gets raised so he isn't forgotten. Everything else in this arc flows from that idea. Hiriluk wanted to cure a country's sick heart. He instilled that same drive into Chopper. And by the end of this arc, Chopper is carrying that dream onto the ship full of people who are going to make it possible. While Chopper gives this arc its heart, surprisingly, Luffy gives it some maturity. And this is a version of Luffy I hadn't fully seen before. It starts with Vivi, and I hear this idea all the time in the professional world, and it sounds simple and almost too simple, but how you say something can be just as important as what you say. Letting your own ego get in the way hurts the bigger picture when you're trying to achieve something. And that's just how the world works, whether you like it or not. And Vivi makes Luffy confront that directly. She shows him that bowing his head isn't weakness. It's a tactical necessity when someone's life is on the line, and he actually listens. What I kept thinking about as Luffy was trying to reach the castle was that it was his turn to carry people on his back. We've seen Luffy fight one-on-one his entire run through the East Blue. This was different. He was carrying Nami and Sanji up a vertical cliff in freezing cold, just repeating "doctor" like a mantra, not forgetting the mission for a single second. I've noticed the show uses the word resolve a lot in its episode titles, and this is exactly what that looks like. Resolve when there's no fight to be had. Just wait, cold, and the next step. Luffy wasn't looking for a 1v1. He wasn't looking for a moment. He was on a mission. He showed more resolve on that climb than in any fight in the East Blue. The small moments land just as hard. He helps the Lapin, that giant carnivorous rabbit thing. He shows it respect when it was buried in the snow, even after they had all that confrontation going up the mountain. And then there's that moment where he actually listens to Sanji and puts on a coat before rushing back out to fight Wapol. He's becoming more aware of his surroundings. He's learning that being a captain means knowing when to carry the burden instead of throwing a punch. Learning how not to fight might be the hardest lesson a captain can learn, and this arc is where Luffy starts learning it. Let's talk about Wapol for a little bit, and in my opinion, this is the most anticlimactic villain confrontation this show has given us so far. Wapol is not very intimidating, he's not visionary, he's not even particularly cruel in a memorable way, he's just petty. And that pettiness is the point. His specific brand of evil was turning medicine into a tool of control. He took the 20 best doctors on the island and used them as personal servants, and left the rest of the population to fend for themselves. If you weren't loyal to him, you didn't get care. He's a man with institutional cruelty dressed up as power and nothing underneath it. Compare that to Hiriluk, who used medicine as an act of faith, completely free, completely selfless, and mostly ineffective. The contrast is what makes Wapol interesting. He had all the resources, all the doctors, and all the infrastructure, and he used it to keep people afraid. Hiriluk had nothing but belief, and he used it to try to heal a country's soul. Luffy dispatches Wapol in a way that's almost an afterthought. He doesn't get a dramatic buildup, he doesn't get a weighty speech, he just gets launched off the castle, and I think that's a deliberate choice. The show is telling you that the real conflict in this arc was never the fight. Wapol was never the obstacle. The obstacle was whether Chopper would believe he deserved a place in this world. It took pirates to save the country, not the military, not the government, pirates. There's a moment where Chopper realizes that Luffy is a rubber man, and then Sanji uses the word monster to describe him. And what that does for Chopper, quietly, is strip the word monster of its power to hurt. Something else I want to point out is that Chopper is really the first analytical fighter we've seen on this crew. His scope move is a more professional approach to combat. He's diagnosing the enemy's defeat before the fight is over. And the Rumble Ball research is something else entirely. He's actively modifying his own Devil Fruit powers through study and experimentation, and that level of intelligence and research is something that this crew is missing, and watching Chopper bring that is really exciting. Luffy's recruitment is also beautifully simple and wildly persistent. He almost kills him with kindness, chasing him with total childlike awe at every transformation. The irony is that Luffy doesn't really put it together that Chopper is a doctor. His instincts just tell him that this cool monster belongs on the ship. Every moment in this arc chips away at Chopper's walls. Sanji's monster comment in regards to Luffy being a rubber man, Luffy's obsession with his transformations, they're all sending the same signal. We are like you, and you are like us. We're all monsters in the eyes of the world. That's exactly why we fit. But the real recruitment happened on that tower. Luffy stood in the line of fire for a piece of cloth. He didn't ask about it, he didn't need it explained, he just saw that it mattered, that Chopper was willing to protect it at any cost. And that was enough for Luffy to put himself between it and the cannonballs. Luffy just needs to know that you'd risk something for it. That's the whole bar. If you believe in it that deeply, he'll believe in it too. And then he'll take a cannonball for it without hesitation. He didn't really pitch Chopper, he didn't explain himself, he just showed Chopper his soul. That's how you recruit a teammate. Then he plants the cherry blossom flag back on top of the castle, and the thing is, Luffy doesn't know the full history of that flag. He doesn't know everything it means to Chopper. It doesn't matter. He knows it means something. He knows it's worth standing for, and he plants it like it's the most natural thing in the world. The skull isn't death, it's faith, and Luffy just proved it. Chopper didn't need to be woken up. He just needed to see what a living, breathing pirate actually looked like. Luffy showed him that. The ending of this arc is one of the most visually stunning things I've seen in anime. Hiriluk spent his life searching for a way to turn a winter wasteland into a field of cherry blossoms. The cure he believed in, the impossible thing. And in the end, that powder turned the entire snow-covered island pink. The thing he was trying to do his whole life, the thing everyone said was impossible, it worked. It just worked after he was gone, and that's a little bit of a gut punch delivered through a visual. One Piece keeps finding new ways to make you feel it. The Straw Hats found their doctor, and Chopper found a family for a journey he was always meant to take. They toast him on the ship, and that moment is sweet in a way that feels completely earned. We all feel for Chopper in that moment. As the pink snow petals fall, Oda is already laying the next layer of this world. Doctorine drops something that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. She reveals that the Pirate King's real name was Gold D. Roger, not Gold Roger. And then she says the spirit of D still lives. So Monkey D. Luffy, Gold D. Roger, she knows something. And please no spoilers, but I'm very interested to see where this goes. Then in a flashback, there's a mention of Dragon, and then there's someone named Ace who's trying to track down Luffy, and he'll be waiting for him in Alabasta for 10 days. So clearly, someone with a deep connection to Luffy, and the show isn't explaining it yet. And then the seven warlords of the sea, that's a system of power that I hopefully get to understand pretty soon. Just as a closing thought, as I think about Chopper and all he's been through, every Straw Hat carries a tragic past. We've seen that now with Nami and Sanji, a little bit with Zoro, and we know about Shanks and what that relationship cost was with Luffy, but there's something in Luffy's name, in that letter D, that maybe suggests his origin runs much deeper than we've seen, and the journey into who Luffy actually is hasn't even started yet, and I have a feeling when it does, it's going to reframe everything. And one final thought is that I just really love Chopper. See you in the next one.